Hello and welcome back to the One United podcast. I'm joined by Henry. Henry, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited for tonight. I'm not actually going to be able to watch the game, which is a bit of a bummer, but I'm still optimistic for a big result.
Yeah.
Yourself?
Yeah. I mean, optimistic is probably one of the words I wouldn't use, but we can be hopeful. And a result is if we get a result here, a win is. I wouldn't say it's a must, but a win here, and we're in a really good position in the group. And PSG and Leipzig are looking over each other's shoulders to see where they can finish.
Yeah, I think puts us in a great position now. Well, we'll stay on the topic then. We'll open the show with a Manchester United versus RB Leipzig preview. So, what are your initial thoughts on the game?
In terms of the game itself, it's going to be a tough one. I think everyone knows that they're a very physical side. They're very good on the ball as well, and Nagelsmann, their manager, is a very, very tactical person. So it's going to be an interesting contest. We have to score the first goal, I think, because if we don't, then and we start chasing the game, they're very good at picking people off. So that's almost a necessity. I'm not sure whether they'll go for a win straight away because, obviously they won their first game as well. So they might just go for a draw away from home, but I think we need to win this game. I wouldn't say it's, as I said, I wouldn't say it's a necessity to win the game, but I think to build on the PSG result, a win is important so that we can go into, the next few games. I think we've got Bajakshir twice. After this, if we go into that game with 6 points, then those two games could essentially win us the group anyway. So it'll be a high points tally in the group for all three sides, United, PSG, and Leipzig. So it's going to be just a dogfight for first and second.
Yeah, you're spot on. To be fair, I think that PSG game's really set us in good stead. And if we win here, they say that 10 points gets you out of a Champions League group stage, and to get 6 out of the opening 2 games would put us in really good stead, wouldn't it? Just need a win and a draw against Besiktas then, and we're through, aren't we? Really?
Besiktas are terrible, man. They are really, really terrible. They're struggling in their own league. So I think
it's a really aging squad, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and they're buying in players that are aging still. And for some reason, in one of their Turkish games, they played. They just bought Rafael and used to play for us. They played him cam, so either they're deluded or just really short players. So they're 2 games that we should win. I know Turkey's going to be difficult away because it always is, but at the end of the day, there's no fans there, so. A win is, I'd say, a necessity in both games. We have to get 6 points out of those.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Back to the Leipzig game then. Now, this is not the same team as last year that got to the semi-finals. That's for sure. They've got rid of their main goal threat in Timo Werner, which gives us a bit of confidence. Now,
saying that, didn't play in the knockout stages.
Yeah. To be fair, yeah. It's definitely not a team that should be. It's definitely not a team that should be sort of underestimated, should we say?
Yeah.
But they do have a lot of injuries, which I was going to come to, which sort of gives me a bit of hope going forward.
Yeah.
Now, we'll sort of go through the injuries because I've got an article up here about it. Now, there's obviously for United, we're hoping Van der Beek starts. That goes without saying. We'll come back to him as well. We'll come back to the fact of Donny van der Beek soon. But just staying with Leipzig, then they've got Tyler Adams out, Marcel Halstenberg, Lucas Klosterman, Konrad Laimer, and Fabrice Hartmann. I don't think he's really that important. And then there's a sort of question mark over the fitness of Nordi Mukiele as well. Now, how big is that for United?
In terms of those players, I'd say Mukiele and Lima are probably going to be the 2 biggest misses for them. Halstenberg is important, but can be replaced in that side, and it depends whether they go with a back 5 because they might today. So in terms of Klosterman's good, but they they can go with a back five. Those two defenders aren't as important. Mukiele is more important, but they've still got Upamecano to play as well. So they're a very good side and they're a very tactical side. Those players, I don't think, make a huge difference. They've still got attacking threats. They've still got Paulson. They've still got Danny Olmo. They've really got a good side. And, they've got the big sloth up front. Alexander Soloth, a very, very good player. Doesn't run very fast, but is a very, very physical striker. And I know he hasn't played much for them this season, but would it surprise me if they started him? Probably not. Maybe a little bit more physicality for them up front. And, someone that's that size will bully people. So, we've got to be careful. We've got to be really careful. People will underestimate Leipzig now because they lost Werner. Put it into perspective here. Werner is a big miss, fair enough, but they haven't lost anyone else of note, really. And they've brought in a couple of players that, are more than capable of filling that void over time. So they're a threat. And I don't think people will see that. They'll see it as, we should win if we play well. Well, they're a very tactical side and they've got a very good manager. So, we've got to be extra careful.
Yeah, definitely. That's the big point, isn't it? I think you could put a Sunday League team out under Nagelsmann and he'd still manage to find a way to win the game. He's such an incredible manager. But I'm also hearing sort of murmurings that Emil Forsberg and Marcel Sabitzer won't be available, which is another massive boost for United.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just going back to that Nagelsmann thing, then he's obviously one of the best managers in the world already, despite his young age now. Is he someone that you'd want to see at United?
I can't even delve into that right now. These comments that people make, they throw managers' names around as if it's nothing for United. It's not someone I've really thought about as manager. I don't think he'd leave Leipzig at the moment. I think he's got a project there that excites him. They've got money. They're not short on it. They're owned by a massive drinks brand, so they're more than capable of financially competing, and they're top at the moment of the Bundesliga. So the aim for him will be to win titles there before he goes anywhere else. And I keep seeing these names thrown around. This person, that person could be United manager. The reality is, man, they're not. They're just not United manager. And until Solskjaer's sacked, then if he does get sacked, then we're not looking at that for now. So I think in terms of that chapter, I personally have just closed it for now because I'm not getting my hopes up for something that might not happen.
Well, so staying on that then, obviously there's a lot of murmurings going on that Pochettino's in talks with the Zenit job. Now, I'll ask you sort of a couple of questions based on that. So to begin with, is that worrying? Because I know he's someone that me and you both wanted to take over Solskjaer when he inevitably left. But, also raises the question, if he's close to joining Zenit, is he actually as good as we've been made to believe as a manager? It just seems like the actual professional footballing world can't rate him that highly if he's going to be going to Zenit of all teams.
Well, I mean, these are all rumours or whatever. So, but I, of course it concerns me a little bit because, we've got a manager that I still don't think is up to it. I know people will argue his case, which is fair enough, but I still don't think he's up to it. I still don't think he's tactically as fantastic as people are making out he is. We beat the big teams because we counter-attack. It's as simple as that. And when we come up against the smaller teams, we struggle. But when it comes to Poch, the idea that getting a job in Europe Zenit are not a top European club, but they're in the Champions League consistently every single year. So, the idea that a manager is crap because he's going to Zenit is a load of shit, really. I think personally, I don't read much into it. At the end of the day, there are no other jobs available. So if he's going to hold out for another job, he could be waiting for another year, and maybe he doesn't want to do that. So it's down to him personally. And if he wants to get back into management as soon as possible and there's no jobs available, the City job's not available. It might be if Pep doesn't win the league or the Champions League this year, but that's a big if. So yeah, he can't keep waiting around, I guess, in the hope that a job will become available. You know, Solskjaer could win the next like 5 or 6 games, and there's job secure for the rest of the year, pretty much.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't read much into it, and I don't think a manager's any much worse than anyone else because they take a job somewhere.
yeah, it's a good point. I didn't really think of it that way. He's got to look out for himself as well, hasn't he? You know.
It's personal stuff, personal pride as well.
Yeah,
Does he really want to be out of a job? Does he really want to piss his wife off for another like year? I'm not sure.
as bad as it sounds, as well, Zenit St. Petersburg aren't a poor club by any means. You know, they were going to offer him a big wage to take over. I remember the wage they offered Villas-Boas to take over after he left.
Yeah,
I believe it was either Chelsea or Spurs, and he went to Zenit. But yeah, he was on ridiculous money over in Russia. So that's another side of it. But you know, going back to the Leipzig game, then obviously we mentioned those absentees. So I've sort of made what I think, or how I think, you know, Leipzig will line up. You know, there's been a couple of outside influences. I've done a bit of research based on sort of how they've lined up in the last couple of weeks, and I've come up with this sort of lineup. I'll see how much you agree with it and so forth. But you know, starting in goal, you've got Glazes. I've got no idea how you pronounce the name, but Glazes, Upamecano, Orban, and Kanate at the centre backs. Henriks and Angelino, wing backs. Haidara and Campbell, centre midfielders, because by the looks of it, they're going to be the only fit central midfielders available. And then Nkuku, Olmo, and Poulsen leading the line. Now, is that a lineup you see as being realistic?
Potentially, I'm not sure. I know Nkunku has played up front this year, but he's also played centre mid. Not sure he'll start up front. I think he probably might start him in midfield and that's purely because of a more industrious kind of player. Campbell's not, although he's a runner, he's more of a technical kind of player. So they want to drop someone in there who's a little bit more busy. I'll say it that way. So that's the only tweak I'd make in terms of the absentees. I think you've got it spot on, really, in terms of the absentees, and who will start ahead of them. I think that's a realistic side, but I'm not 100% sure whether they'll start that exact team, and they might go for a 5-3-2 and drop Olmo back into centre mid, because that's where he's played sometimes this year as well. So Poulsen probably will start. I reckon there's an outside chance at that they might start Saul off just for physicality up front. He's a hold-up player and Poulsen can play off him, so they might start him up front. But I think that's close, relatively realistic. But you know, in terms of formation, I think they'll go 5 at the back. I'd be very surprised away from home if they went with a 4.
Yeah, well, I think the consensus is that, you know, Olmo and Nkuku is hard to represent it on there, but they wouldn't be sort of wingers. They'd be sort of, I think, roaming playmakers deployed behind Poulsen, sort of support him, and then all the width would come from those fullbacks. Now, you know, it's the first time we're going to have seen Angelino against United since he was absolutely tore a new one when United played City. You know, but he's changed completely as a player since then. You know, he was one of Leipzig's real bright sparks last year. So, you know, do you think he's got a real point to prove going into this game?
I don't think he's got a point to prove to anyone, to be honest. I think that he's, you know, City didn't really give him a chance. I know it sounds harsh, but they started Mendy over him, and Mendy's proven to be crap at the moment. So they've started players that I don't think have got more capability. Angelino is scoring goals. He's getting assists this year. He's looking like a really talented kind of wing back, I guess you could say. So he's a very attacking player. Defensively, not as sound, but then he's got cover behind him if you're playing with a back 5. So he's not getting exposed as much. I think Nagelsmann realizes that defensively he's got weaknesses. So I don't think he's got a point to prove to anyone. You know, maybe if they're against City, maybe he would, but not against United. I don't think that's really an issue.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, the big, you know, other thing that I want to talk about was obviously Upamecano. Now, I was a big advocate for his signing in the summer that obviously didn't come off. There's now all the talk of his lower than £40 million release clause for next year. Now, you know, how excited are you to watch him play, and, you know, at the prospect of him possibly signing for United next summer?
Well, in terms of United players, I don't actually believe anything until I see him in a United shirt. So I wouldn't hold any high hopes for signing him. Liverpool could nick him. City might go for another centre half if Laporte's still injury prone next year. So yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't hold any high hopes for signing him. But it'll be good to see what he's like. We all know he's a talented player. We all know he's quick and he's industrious, but he's also a very technical centre half, which is something that clubs look for nowadays. But yeah, I'll look at him and see whether I think he's any good. But especially against a bit of pace. But yeah, I'm not. As I said, I'm not. I'm not holding out thinking, right, he plays well, we're going to sign him, because that's just at the moment pretty unrealistic with the situation United are in.
Yeah, I think just going back to what you said as well, he's a very pacey player, and he sort of complements that back three incredibly well, doesn't he? You've got, the speed side of things in Upamecano and in a way in Konate as well, and then you've got the big physical presence of Orban to sort of lead the defense and win all the aerial duels. So it's going to be, very, very hard for United to get anything going forward this game, because we've got the pace going forward, but that can be dealt with by Upamecano, and then say we still had a Zlatan Ibrahimovic or a Romelu Lukaku type striker who can just bully defenders. Orban's going to be in their way. You're not going to get anything out of him, so it's definitely going to be a challenge for this team. But we've seen it on numerous occasions. They are there for the taking. They're not as defensively stable sometimes. They're prone to a mistake, and I'm just hoping that something comes up at Old Trafford. So I think that just about draws us to the end, unless there's anything you want to talk about.
No, I think that's all I can really say on the matter. We'll see what happens tonight.
Well, quick prediction then. We'll go with the usual: first goal scorer and final score.
First goal scorer. God, I couldn't call it. Fernandes, why not? Penalty. And final score. I actually cannot even predict this. We could turn up and win 3-0, or we could turn up and lose 6-1. I really couldn't tell you. What about you?
I'm going to go first goal scorer Van der Beek, just speaking it into existence. If he starts, he'll score. That's what I think. And I think their injuries will really play into our hands going forward. I think as good as that front line is, with how strong we've been defensively, I think we should be all right. So I'm going to go 2-0. I think Van der Beek will score first, put us one ahead, and then we'll get the second on the counter-attack when they're throwing everything at us.
I'd say that's fair.
Fair enough. Now, moving on, it's a topic we seem to cover all the time, but stuff just keeps coming up about them. It's getting tiring now, but we're talking about the Glazes again. Henry, take the floor.
So how do I describe it best? I came to I wouldn't say it's a realization. It could be. It's not a revelation for sure. We've thought it all before. It's a reality check. As I mentioned to you before, it's a reality check as a Man United fan. And the painful thing is, we're fucked. And that's the truth of the matter. We're fucked. As a club, we're struggling. We're going to struggle with these owners. There's no doubt that they don't want to spend any money. And, we thought things couldn't get any worse over the summer with, the lack of signings and the lack of money spent on the actual squad itself. And then we go and find out that they've taken their annual dividends at the club. So this year they've now taken 23 million at the club. Money that could be spent on players, could be spent on infrastructure. The reality is I'm beat as a United fan now. I'm not giving up on the club, but I'm beat. I don't see anywhere, any positive way this can go with the owners. They mentioned and moaned about the COVID impact on all these statements and whatnot, and then they go and take their annual dividends out. So, where do we go as United fans? Where do we go from this? I actually don't know.
Well, I've got an article anyway to look through, just explaining exactly how bad this ownership is. Now, it's from 90 minutes, so I'm not entirely sure how accurate it is, but they're usually pretty spot on. Now, the article starts with, so the Glazers have taken out 89 million pounds from United in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
5 years. So they've taken out almost 90 million over the last few years, whereas the situation at Chelsea, 440 million pounds has been invested by Roman Abramovich. So United are simply running. They make the biggest revenues in the world from year to year, and that's what they're running on. There's no money being injected by these owners, simply being taken away. The owners know that this is a sustainable business without them even having to, put a penny in, which it's got to be frustrating, hasn't it? Now, you look at this chart really just summarizes it all. There are how many? One, two, three, four, five, six, 7 teams where the owners have taken any sort of money out, and our dividends taken is almost twice as much as the next closest team in Tottenham. Now that's just damning, is it not?
yeah. As I said to you before, I can moan and complain about these guys 24/7, but it doesn't make a difference to me anymore. It doesn't, because I can moan and say these guys are this and that. The reality is they ain't leaving anytime soon, and we know that deep down. I know as United fans, I've seen some people try to find the positives and everything, and I understand that, but at the moment, as long as this keeps happening off the pitch, the shit will keep coming up on the pitch. So
Absolutely.
the investment is lacking, and we've seen with all the project big picture stuff that they're just money hungry owners. They don't really give a shit about the fans. They can say that they can say they're going to do this and that, and they can say, oh, we want fans back in. The reality is they don't actually want the fans back in. They just want the revenue again. They just want
Yeah.
their money back. As I said, I can't describe it any other way as I'm beat. I am, as a United fan, it feels like when you're pushed to the floor, you're getting kicked even more when they do shit like this. And I want to clear something up now as well. I mean absolutely no disrespect to lower league clubs by saying all this. Not at all. I know people take this the wrong way if you support a lower league club, and I understand why you'd be pissed off if we're moaning about the Glazers when clubs are going bust and stuff. But this is purely on United. I respect lower league clubs and I respect the troubles they're going through at the moment. But the reality is this is one of the biggest clubs in the world, and we're watching it kind of implode from the inside, not from the outside. The Glazers are pulling it apart from the inside in front of us, and it's I wouldn't say it's the equivalent to, it's not even close to the stuff that Bolton and Bury and Wigan and clubs like that have gone through. Not even close. But as a United fan, it's disheartening to see, and it's your club. We all, it is a part of all of us, and as long as these guys are in charge of the club, there will be a lack of trophies, a lack of spending, and more taken out of the club. And
well, just to put it into perspective for lower league fans, because I can see how it seems like we're all just whining because we've not signed Sancho. The idea of Sancho, United fans don't really care that we didn't sign Sancho in the grand scheme of things. The problem was that there was money there to spend on Sancho, and they chose not to. Now, it's all well and good saying we spend a lot of money, but this is money we earn from revenues, not money that the owner has given us. We haven't got some big cash influx every single year from the owners. Now, Arsenal fans claim that they have bad owners, which they do. They don't put anything in, but they also take no dividends out. So they're at a complete net zero. Arsenal just run completely on their earnings, whereas we lose money every year when you don't factor in what we've actually made through revenue. So we're losing approximately £25 million a year, which, while we've still got a lot of money now, that will add up. And if things keep going like this for another 10, 20 years, we're not going to be a Premier League club anymore. We will not be able to afford to be a Premier League club anymore. Because if you're making these revenues, but a large part of them have to go back out on wages and other things to keep the club running. And if you're taking out an extra £25 million a year from the club, it's going to add up. At the minute, we're about breaking even in terms of revenue and expenditure. You then factor in the 25 million being taken away. We're losing money every year. The debt keeps increasing.
Debt's eventually like 500 fucking million pounds. How can people be okay with not? People are so positive. I don't get it. I just don't understand it. This club is being run into the ground by these owners. How can people back these people? £500 million of debt. That is insane. The club's only worth like 3 billion. That is ridiculous. How can people be happy with this? I just don't get it.
But yeah, the counter argument to you should be grateful you've even got a club. You look at Bury and teams like that have folded, but it's very early stages. But the way it's going, we're not going to have a club if they keep taking as much money out as they do. This club will go bust eventually. It will take a long time because of the years and years of work of Sir Matt Busby and Sir Alex Ferguson that got this club to where they were. They're in a very stable position, and they will be for another 30 years. But if in those 30 years the Glazers keep doing what they're doing, Manchester United, they definitely won't be a Premier League club anymore. Whether they're a club at all remains to be seen. But yeah, that's my piece on things. You got anything to say before we move on?
It's just painful. No, it's just painful, and I've mentioned my father numerous times on this podcast before. And this reality check came from a comment that he made, which is actually spot on, and it's disheartening to kind of hear. The reality is, it's not our business; it's theirs. They can do what they want with it. It's their money, they own it. So we don't have a say in anything that happens. And if they want to run it dry, they can do that. And that's the most painful thing to hear, because there is nothing we can do anymore. They'll just do what they want to do, and it's theirs to play with, which is, as people have said before, our history wasn't theirs to buy, and that is so true, and it's so unfair that a group of like 5 or 6 people would do this to a club. It's just, it's just rough to see.
Well, speaking of rough to see, it's been in the headlines recently that a former Manchester City academy player at the age of 17 has committed suicide, and it seems to be a recurring theme. But this has brought it back to light again, the issue of mental health within football. Now, I think social media is a big part of this, but it is 100% getting worse every single year. Now, I know you want to speak about it for a bit, so I'll let you take the floor while I get what I was going to say ready.
Well, I'm not only doing this because of something yesterday. Me and you both were luckily had the chance to go on Radio Manchester yesterday, and Gaz, who was on the podcast yesterday, day before yesterday, asked me to talk about mental health, obviously relating to the comments that Ian Evatt made of man up to his goalkeeper, which, he admitted was wrong, which is fair enough. That's, good of him to do that. He shouldn't have said those words. But yeah, I think, and I've been guilty of it before, so I'm not gonna slate people too much. I've never been to a stage where I've ever personally directed abuse at someone, because that's just, to direct something, a message or send a voice comment to someone or send a death threat is just completely beyond me. But I think we're in a situation now where it shouldn't have taken someone dying for us to look at this again. And the sad thing is it's taken Jeremy Whiston to die for us to look at, oh, maybe we're not looking after younger players enough. And it all goes back to not just us on Twitter, media as well. We've seen people targeted over the years. We've seen only recently Mason Greenwood being targeted on, throughout social media and, newspapers and stuff. And I understand that they're professional footballers, they're earning a lot of money, but they're still people. So if you're ever thinking about kind of directing a comment towards someone or sending a hateful comment towards someone, please just think twice, because they're a human being as well. They might be earning a lot of money, but they are a human being, and you can be the richest person on the planet. It doesn't mean you're happy. So people have got to take into account that these guys are human beings. They've got families. So just think before you say stuff. And I know I'm reactionary. People will bring that back, and that's fair enough. I'm reactionary after games, and I criticize performances and stuff. I won't criticize people's personal lives, because I don't think it's fair to delve into someone's personal life. That's their decision as to what they do. Especially as, I wouldn't expect someone to delve into my personal life and talk about that. But it's okay to criticize a performance, but it's not okay to direct abuse directly at someone. We've seen it with Jordan Pickford as well. Apparently he's had to hire bodyguards because of all the stuff that's happened. Come on, guys. I don't know how many people are going to see this, but seriously, just please think twice before you say shit like this, because, I know it was only as simple as someone getting let go from their academy and it sent them into a spiral, but imagine what comments and nasty, like, death threats and stuff do to people. So, yeah, I would say just think twice, and it's hit home, but it shouldn't have taken this to talk about it. We've spoken about it before on the podcast, James, haven't we?
Yeah.
And, I'll continue to do so, because I think it's important, whether people believe that that's true or not, but I think it's important to talk about, and people should be able to open up. So it's not just players, but obviously just think before you direct abuse at someone. Don't do it, and think about what you're saying before you kind of say it. So yeah, that's all I can really talk about on that subject. What do you make of it?
I think you've done it a lot of justice. Now, I'll go back to what you said about it's come back into the limelight when it should have always been there. But that's the sort of sad thing about it, is we have that many problems in football that this whole Black Lives Matter and anti-racism movement has swept, as good as and as necessary as it is, it's swept the mental health side of things sort of under the carpet, and it's taken something big for them to come to light, and that just says more about football than anything, and the amount of problems we have in today's game. Now, I wanted to bring up this article I found from The Guardian, because it has some really sort of damning stats, about mental health among footballers. Now, the start of the article states that over 10% of PFA members have sought counselling services this year. Now, PFA members are made up of professional footballers, former footballers, managers, and all sorts of stuff like that. Now, it's saying there's been a sharp rise in the number of footballers concerned for their mental health in 2020. In the year up to September, so just 9 months into the year, 464 members of the PFA have had access to counselling service, which is compared to 653 across all of 2019. Bearing in mind that this study was taken only 9 months into the year, not the full year. Now, the PFA has 4,000 members, meaning in only 9 months of the year so far, more than 10% have sought some form of help, which that's damning in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
42% of those are current players, which I'm given the whole social media thing at the minute, I'm really not surprised by. 55% former players and 3% family members. Now, the other thing is 95% of the calls are made by male members, Now,
Yeah.
I understand there will be a large majority of male members in the PFA, given how male dominated the sport still is. But
Mhm.
that's something we'll come on to as well. The fact that it is a male issue as much as it is a female issue, and it's not talked
Yeah.
about enough. Now, the things that we're going into counselling for were most common were low mood and anxiety,
Yeah.
followed by addictive disorder with substance, and the same with gambling.
Mhm.
And there was a couple of relationship issues as well. Now, heads up, the sports charity are doing a lot at the minute, but it's still hard to say that enough is being done. Enough will never, until we can fix the problem of social media. There'll never be enough. Never be enough going on to support footballers.
Mhm.
But those stats that I read out, especially the fact that we're not all the way through the year yet, it
Yeah.
really is damning, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, it, we've spoken about it so many times before. It's pretty horrible to see, and I know he's apologised for it, but that comment that Ian Evatt made, that's so it's way off. It really is. You don't tell someone to man up. What does that even mean? Seriously. I know he's apologised for it, and fair play to him for apologising to it. He's saying people may have taken it out of context and stuff. He didn't mean it in that way. Don't say it in the first place. Just think before you say stuff. You're in a privileged position as you are, so think before you say stuff. That term is used often, and this is why male suicide rates are so high, because they refuse to talk about their own problems because they're scared that they're not a man. Now, I can say to everyone now that I've struggled with it before, and am I ashamed of it? Partly, yes, but it happens. We all go through it, but people need to talk to other people about it. It doesn't have to be a professional, whatever. And we've seen on there that stat of 95% male members. I'm actually glad that it's 95% male, and that's not not a knock on female members or whatever. But I'm glad that men are talking about mental health issues now more than they used to, because that's good to see. But they shouldn't be there in the first place, especially for footballers. Footballers should not feel under threat. They are doing a job. Jordan Pickford in that tackle did not go out to hurt Van Dijk. He did not go out to hurt him. I'm convinced of that. You don't go out to damage someone's career or, and having to hire bodyguards. And I'm sure he struggled from it. Ancelotti said, made a comment that said, it wasn't easy for him after the game. People never thought about him. They just thought about giving him abuse. So think before you say stuff, because you never know what impact it could have, and it needs to be talked about a little bit more. I don't know, it's frustrating to see now that we're still in this. It feels like we're living 50 years ago still, where you're supposed to be a man. The reality is that we need to be encouraged to talk more about stuff and be open about it, because it's nothing to be ashamed of at all. So yeah, just think before you say stuff, because we can come on here and criticize performances. That's that's criticizing a player for not doing their job, essentially, which I don't think is amazing, and I'm not proud of some of the stuff that I've said before, but I don't think that's terrible criticizing them for if someone gives you a bad mark on what you're doing at uni, for example, they'll criticize you, but at the end of the day, you're not doing what you're doing properly, so they'll try and help you to be better, or try and criticize you to bring you up. But some of the hate and abuse, and especially towards family members, they shouldn't even be in the equation. Leave family out of it. That's not right. That's not fair. Leave personal lives out of it. And you can criticize performance, but don't ever send hate to a player, because it's just not on.
Yeah, it goes without saying, doesn't it? I think you've done pretty well in wrapping it all up. So we'll move on to the next topic now. Liverpool played yesterday. They won, but the big news coming out of it is that Fabinho will be out for a while with what looks to be a hamstring injury. Now, this comes just a week or so after the big news that Van Dijk was going to be out for at least half a year. Now, I believe Joel Matip's out as well. So Liverpool have one fit.
Today.
Yeah, they have Joe Gomez as the only fit senior centre back. Now, as much as you hate to say it, does this bring a small smile to your face, Emre?
I would say that after all the shit that Liverpool fans give everyone else and how disgusting some of them are, it's karma more than anything. It's karma. If what goes around comes around. And they were all laughing last year when Laporte got injured. They were all laughing last year when that happened. So I think it's just karma coming back to bite them in the ass. And although it's not nice to see someone injured and out for the season, hopefully he recovers well, because genuinely that can damage someone's career. And even as a rival fan, I don't want to see someone's career ended through an injury. Defensively at the moment, if they can't get Matip fit, and even a fit Matip isn't fantastic. So, and they almost conceded yesterday. I watched some of their game towards the last 10 minutes. They were poor. Anders Dreyer almost scored against them. The guy that failed at Brighton, I think he made one appearance. They were like, "Nah, you're not good enough." So, yeah, I mean, he almost scored to level the game before Salah got the penalty. So, yeah, I mean, I would say now, watch this space, because it could be an interesting couple of months, considering that Thiago's not fully fit at the moment. Joel Matip's injured. Joe Gomez yesterday got turned inside out a couple of times, and that was quite funny to see, because of the amount of Liverpool fans I've seen saying how fantastic he is as a player. That was quite funny to see. But yeah, just a very interesting game.
Yeah, I didn't watch it personally because I was covering a non-league game, but I saw the stats afterwards, and it was very surprising to see that even at Anfield, it was a good team that Liverpool put out, and make no doubt about it. And they scored 2 goals with their 2 shots on target, one of which being a penalty. Now, that's not good enough for a Jurgen Klopp team at all, is it? If against better opposition they would have been found out. It's lucky that they were playing against a team who more times than not would struggle in a Europa League group stage, never mind a Champions League one. But
that's a team that got battered 4-0 at home last week by Atalanta.
Yeah, says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. So Liverpool thought they were going to cruise that group. If I were a Liverpool fan right now, I'd be thinking twice about what, they're all saying, "Oh, it's easy group. Reality is that we're almost doing better in the group that, that we're in at the moment. We've got Leipzig and PSG with us. They've got Midtjylland and Atlanta and Ajax. Not exactly a difficult group, I'd say. So, just be careful before you start cheering about what group you've got until you actually play the games. That's all I can really say.
No, I've got an article which just sort of summarises what the Liverpool are going through defensively at the minute. Now, obviously, Van Dijk and Fabinho were both out. Matip, sorry. It's unclear whether he will have recovered in time to play West Ham. But, even if he does recover, he's a big injury worry for them constantly, isn't he? He's very injury prone, so that the chance of him re-aggravating an injury is very likely. Now, what surprised me is, their upcoming fixtures. Now, it's likely that, given the hamstring injury, Fabinho will be out for all of these. Now, West Ham at home, Atalanta away, Man City away, Atalanta at home, Brighton away, Ajax, Wolves, Midtjylland again, and Fulham. Now, if a full-strength Liverpool team, there'd be no reason why they couldn't win every single one of these games. This run of fixtures could have comfortably, I say comfortably. In reality, a win in every single one of these games, and Liverpool are through from the Champions League group, and they are in pole position to win the league back to back.
That's right. Yeah.
Whereas now, with one fit centre back, depending on how Joel Matip fares, This is going to be a really difficult period for them, is it not?
It's going to be pretty rough, and the games aren't particularly massive and difficult. They're not playing like four of, I guess you could say four of the big six or whatever. They're not playing like Spurs or Chelsea or United or whatever in that kind of crop of games. Sorry, but they are playing some relatively tough sides. Atlanta twice is going to be no easy task. Atlanta are very good at scoring goals. They're pretty crap defensively at times. Wolves is going to be an interesting challenge. I think West Ham, that's going to be a relatively tough challenge. You beat Midtjylland 2-0 at home. And, I know they've rotated a little bit, but they need to rotate throughout these games. They can't play the same team every time. So they might have to start a weakened side against Atlanta away, and that is going to be a very, very interesting game.
I think the things I notice as well is you look at the gaps in between the games as well. Now, between Man City and Atalanta, there's an international break, so there's a big gap there. But other than that, the gaps in between games are 4 days at most. Now, this is a Liverpool squad who lack depth anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think this could be a really, really challenging time for them, not only defensively but going forward as well. They've put out basically the same 11 for 3 years now. Now, I would not be surprised if more players pick up injuries now that they're being relied on more heavily as well with Van Dijk's absence. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe a Salah or a Mane pick up an injury as well, and if that occurs, then Liverpool really are in trouble. Now, Sky Sports quite luckily have done us an article on who could fill in. Now, there's Reece Williams first. Now, this is a player that I've seen a couple of times, and he undoubtedly looks promising, but he's not all the way there yet. Now, he played when Liverpool beat Lincoln 7-2, but that 2 there it will cause some concern because he was in a defence that conceded 2 against a League One team. So that will be somewhat worrying. He played in the defeat to Arsenal in the next round, so he's not kept a clean sheet this year by the looks of it. Now, he was part of the FA Youth Cup winning side, which bodes well. It's a good level of competition there. But he looks like the most suitable replacement for Van Dijk, even looks wise. He's got the big frizzy hair. But moving on, Sepp van der Berg. Now, I remember he was Liverpool's only signing, I think, last summer, wasn't he? So there's big interest for him, but again, it's not looking like he's going to be anywhere near the level. Nathaniel Phillips, I can't pretend I've ever heard of him, but
he was on at Stuttgart. Yes, he was. Yeah.
At 23 years old, if he had any sort of promising talent, he'd be in that squad already, wouldn't he?
Yeah, no, I'd say that's right. And they tried to loan him out. This year and couldn't get it done. So I guess that's good for them because they didn't realize this was going to happen. And then sticking a 17-year-old in is utterly, in my opinion, utterly ridiculous. It's a stupid decision to make in the first place. So I'd pretty much rule him out from the get-go. You don't stick a 17-year-old in for his debut in a Premier League game or a Champions League game. You just don't.
Absolutely not. Now,
defender.
Now, one thing that they have raised, and it was something I was thinking of earlier. Now, that could they do sort of another Fabinho type move where they bring someone into centre back, and that got me thinking, how brilliant would it be to get everything full circle, put the proper versatility man in there? How good would it be to see James Milner playing centre back for Liverpool? It's got to be the only position he's never played.
I watched what games did I watch? Oh, the Ajax game and Milner played, and obviously I had a Liverpool fan sat next to me, constant moaning about how crap he was throughout the game. He is very good at running, he's good at running. He's good at fitness. He'll win the bleep test, but that does not mean that he's a good centre half. So I mean, I wouldn't even play. I mean, they're saying, see, Sky Sports do bum lick Liverpool a little bit with some of the stuff they say. Could Jordan Henderson fill in at centre half? No, he couldn't. He's not a centre half. He's barely a defensive midfielder at the moment. He's good at playing passes, whatever. But really, you're going to have a quick striker running at Jordan Henderson. I'm sure that's going to go down well, isn't it? So
Yeah, it's going to
that's
be
a stupid thing to say.
it's going to be interesting to say the least. Looking forward. Now we'll move
Yeah,
on to our last topic. It's a bit more of a light-hearted one, and it comes with the news that Papa John's are the new official sponsor of the EFL Trophy. Now, to me, this is horrible news because I remember laughing all summer about the fact that Ligue 1 was going to be called the Uber Eats
yeah,
Ligue 1, and now England have. It's not one of the big trophies, but it's a major trophy regardless for some of the lower league clubs.
yeah.
That is officially sponsored by Papa John. Henry, take the floor.
I don't know what else you can say, really. I mean, as I said before the podcast, Checker Trade Trophy, fine, okay, fair enough. Not a great name, but a little bit more respectable. Um,
Look at
and
that
then
monstrosity.
and then leasing.com, a little bit more respectable. And then if you ask a manager, oh, so what trophy is going to go for this year? Yeah, I reckon we're going to go for the Papa John's trophy.
I think the Man of the Match award instead of champagne.
Sounds like a
saying, sorry?
Arsenal would be involved in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Papa John's trophy. Oh God.
Sounds like a pre-season tournament. Go on,
it's
what
a
you saying?
3-year deal as well. 3-year deal.
Sounds like one of those
of hitting you.
It sounds like one of those pre-season tournaments that Spurs fans brag about winning.
Yeah, exactly. It's
but yeah,
really, out of all the sponsors, I know they probably offer the most money, but out of all the sponsors, the people in the offices thought, yeah, Papa John's, yeah, that'll ring nicely in people's ears. Oh, so what game are you going to go watch tonight? Oh, I'm going to go watch Cheltenham, Barnsley or whatever, or Cheltenham Portsmouth. Oh, what are you going to go watch it in? Oh, it's going to be the Papa John's Trophy. Oh, right, okay. Well, I'm sure loads of crowds will turn up to watch games in the Papa John's Trophy when they're allowed back in.
Well, I know one
rubbish.
I know one thing for sure. Now, if you do get a Papa John's pizza as your Man of the Match award, I know that Luke Shaw is going to be requesting to play for the under-23s soon, and he's going to really start putting a shift in for them. The promise of a free pizza at the end of every game is motivation enough for him, which it could be a good thing for us that we see Tellez more. But
Shaw's played well recently. To be fair, I can't really knock him that much.
But all jokes aside, then it is a hilarious name, but it's sort of damning that the children fans of these young clubs are constantly being exposed to these fast food brands. Is it being such a big trophy being sponsored by a takeaway brand? Is that not promoting obesity?
Oh, it really isn't great. I'll tell you that now. It really isn't great. We've got every they're talking about, oh yeah, we're gonna we want you to exercise more, blah blah blah. Oh yeah, but we're just gonna make Domino's the official match sponsor for England games. Oh, brilliant, fantastic, that's helpful, isn't it? And Sky Sports as well, they're the same. It's whoever pays the most money. At the end of the day, we see Domino's all over the place. It's not good at all. And now you've got your obviously Uber Eats. I know that's Ligue 1 sponsor, but also they're quite big in the UK. You've got Deliveroo, which is massive again, and it promotes fast food. They've got to be really careful with this. And I think you're right in saying that, because people just don't read into it. They don't read into the fact that it's a fast food brand. And the reality is, it is a fast food brand, and it's promoting it. If you have more discount because you're watching an EFL game and you get a Papa John's pizza, then you're going to take it. So, yeah, I don't think it's good. I think it's poor promotion from them. You're right.
The confusion for me is that I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that the FA have banned just tobacco products and alcoholic products being sponsored, like main sponsors of teams and competitions. Now, alcoholism and smoking is obviously a life ruiner, but I'm all for body positivity, but there's got to be some recognition that this is promoting obesity, which kills as many, if not more, people than alcoholism and smoking does.
Yeah, exactly. We associate alcohol and smoking with really negative connotations, but the reality is that fast food is just as bad, and people have got to see that. People don't see that, and the more available that they become, the cheaper they become, the more access we have to them, the more prominent they'll become in like basically in society. So yeah, they can ban as many, they can ban alcoholic drinks or whatever. I mean, Heineken are now an official match sponsor, but it's Heineken alcohol-free beer. Yeah, right. Okay, you're definitely just promoting the alcohol-free shit. You're not promoting your brand, are you? So yeah, you're right. It is bad, and we don't read into it as much. We don't see it as that much of a negative. The reality is, it is a real negative, and people have got to start realizing that.
It goes along as well because a large portion of English football league clubs are sponsored by betting companies as well. Now, at what point do we draw the line and say that like betting's similar to fast food in that it's good in small doses, but it can easily ruin lives. So, how is there not some moral obligation to just steer clear of these things that can easily influence people to ruin their lives? Because it's not like you're going to be like the logic of banning smoking products and alcoholic products from teams, but not betting and obesity, fast food. Sorry, there's just no logic there. Surely, you've got to ban them all, haven't you?
Yeah, it's you either go all in or not at all. That's how I see it. And yeah, I mean, there's a club, Stoke, are owned by Bet365. Their owners are the guys that own Bet365. So, and they've got something like a net worth of £6 billion that what's his name? Peter Quattez, whatever his name is. I don't know whether it's still him. But he's yeah, from what I know, the chairman's still the chairman of Bet365. And isn't that a bit ridiculous? Oh, let's promote gamble aware stuff. The reality is, what they do is they go, they'll do the advert for like 25 seconds, right? Okay. And then in the final 2 seconds, they'll do the small print and they'll go, oh, stop when it gets too much, or, that is such a little portion of what you could be telling people. The reality is that betting's being encouraged. I bet every now and then. I know when to stop, but some people don't know when to stop, and some people just get too deep in it and realize too late that it's a really bad habit, and it is a bad habit. So yeah, I think it needs to be looked into more, and there needs to be an independent kind of commission to look at, an independent body almost, to look at what's going on with promoting all these brands, because it's not good and it's not healthy for the country.
Not at all. Not at all. Now, sticking with the EFL, just to round off the show, I know you had something you wanted to say about Gary Neville.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I've done no real research into this at all because it was sprung on a bit late. So I'm just going to let you completely take the floor, and we'll round out the show afterwards. So take the floor.
So I just wanted to mention something, and you mentioned Gary Neville. It's not negative at all about him. In fact, I'm going to praise him. I'm not praising him because he's ex-United. I'm praising him because what he's saying is right. Now, there's a video I shared yesterday. I don't know whether people will look at it, but if you're watching this now, I'd advise you to go have a look at it. It's probably about 25 minutes long. I know it's a lot of time, but it's Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher talking about Project Big Picture, and it is fantastic to watch. They're spot on. That's all I can really say about those two. They are absolutely spot on. The idea behind Project Big Picture was to give power back to the top 6 clubs, and we've spoken about it before on the podcast. Me and James, we had most of an episode on it. Now, I criticised heavily, and I still stand by what I said, but the problem is some of the points that they're making are correct. They need more money in the EFL, and we know that. They need more money being filtered down from the Premier League to the EFL. Now, the problem was there was conditions with it. That's what really did my head in. There was conditions on this Project Big Picture that, the bigger clubs would get more money and they would be permanently in the Premier League. So That was frustrating to see. But the idea that the EFL needs more money is so correct. It really is. We've seen clubs go bust, and we're seeing clubs now that are in financial difficulties. Southend today managed to just about get themselves out of a court situation where they had a winding up order against them. Clubs are going under, and the Premier League are doing absolutely sod all about it. Now, they filtered down something like 60 million to the lower league clubs. That is not going to last. That is not going to last. And I can assure you one thing, the Premier League have more than 60 million to give down to those lower league clubs. It is not fair. They need to give more money. They need to have a kind of payment schedule where throughout this COVID situation, every lower league club is going to struggle. Now, they need to do it correctly because they can't give money to the Championship because, as I mentioned before, you'll be giving money to massive owners who have got loads of money. Stoke are owned by someone whose net worth is £6 billion. So to give more money to them would be insanity. So they've got to carefully do this, but it's got to be done by someone independently, I think. I don't see it being done by the Premier League themselves. I don't think they'll do it. I think they're too money hungry for themselves, and I don't think they'll give the money down. Gary Neville was spot on with some of the stuff he said. I know people have mentioned him as being just the owner of Salford and you own this and why would you want more money? He made it very clear, and watch the video. I really would advise you to watch it because he made it very clear that he does not want that money, which is fair enough. But other clubs need it because it needs to go down to grassroots. We need to have more, I'm not going to say more homegrown talent, but we need to have more money in lower leagues so that there's a system in place. There's a system in place in Germany that works fantastically. We've seen the academies in Germany. They're doing wonderful jobs. They're not built, and the clubs aren't built on money, So who could I use an example? Frankfurt are usually in Eintracht Frankfurt are usually in kind of Europa League or maybe Champions League sometimes. They don't spend a lot of money, but they're very efficient with the way that they run. Premier League clubs need to be more efficient. They need to rely less on outside factors, and they need to rely more on grassroots and bringing players up and scouting throughout this country, because the more you improve the lower leagues, the better the top leagues will get. That's just how football works. So there needs to be a system that works for everyone, because we've seen with La Liga as well, Barca and Real are losing money. Real don't really have much academy prospects coming through, so they rely on buying players, and when they can't, they struggle. So there needs to be better kind of control, and English football will die slowly if there's not control taken now, because COVID will just destroy all the lower leagues. And James, you work at Baseford.
I do, yes.
Yeah. So imagine a world without Baseford. That's what we could be looking at in the next 5 years.
I think to build on what you're saying, Project Big Picture is such a misleading name, because if it was Project Big Picture, it would be solely about sorting these lower league teams out, because the big picture is if you build from the bottom, you improve these non-league teams, these League Two, League One teams, the whole of English football gets better, and everyone in England, from a football point of view, benefits from that.
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously steps that need to be taken in, certain things like the takeovers of clubs and stuff like that. But from that point of view, giving money to lower clubs makes sense. But if you have to give money to lower clubs in exchange for giving the bigger clubs more power, then it's a definite no-go. And I think you sort of keep it as it is and let these clubs grow on their own. But if you take out the COVID circumstances, obviously, because that's had a massive impact, and I think everyone needs money at the minute, footballing wise. Now, you were saying that Baseford that I work for could be in trouble now. A lot of teams in their league have been lucky in that they've got relatively wealthy owners, and they've just about managed to stay afloat. But
Yeah,
another lockdown, like it's looking like we're going
yeah.
towards it, and they're going to be obliterated. So money is needed, but not at the expense of ruining the game from the top down.
No,
You've
it
got to
needs
build.
to be filtered,
Yeah,
correctly.
you've got to build from the bottom to the top, not build from the top to the bottom. And
No.
the big clubs don't see this, and that's a problem because they hold all the power already. They're the money men.
Yeah,
So
and also I don't understand. You mentioned the ownership stuff there. How on earth was Steve Dale allowed to buy Berry for £1? How on earth was he able to buy them for £1? Couldn't afford anything when he went in there. Ran out of money. Couldn't afford to pay the players. The club is. I know it still exists. They need a heavy amount of funding, but as it stands, the club will go bust if they can't find a league within the next couple of years. They've been expelled from the leagues from League Two, and that's such a shame. It really is, and the EFL do nothing to help. They do absolutely nothing to help. They just go, oh well, that's another club gone. So all these power-hungry, money-hungry entities need to realise that it's just not fair because I would hate to see United go under. My local side around here, I'd hate to see Exeter go under. And COVID, although it's a massive negative, has maybe made people realise a little bit more that even before this, change was needed in football. There needed to be more money pumped down from the Premier League. Okay, so perspective here. The TV deal for the Premier League from Sky, I believe, was around £3 billion. £3 billion. Why can't some of that money be filtered down through the clubs, go to the lower clubs? Why couldn't money be, when Bury were going under, why couldn't money be donated from, a kind of collaboration of clubs? If they all donated, like all Premier League clubs, or whatever, evenly donated like £200,000, which is, by the way, pretty much nothing to them. If they all donated that money, Bury would be still in League Two right now. They'd be fan owned in League Two. They'd have players. They'd have staff. It wouldn't be an issue. So there needs to be more care taken of lower clubs because at the end of the day, Jamie Vardy, a prime example. I know, everyone uses him a lot. Prime example of what you can do. Chris Smalling came from Maidstone. He's now playing at Roma. So why do people not understand how important the lower league game is? Because that's where the academy players are picked up, and that's where our prime talent comes from. So we need to be more caring, and the Premier League clubs need to realise that if money goes back down to them, it will benefit them in the long run because they'll get better players.
definitely. And on that note, I think we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Is that all right with you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks as ever for joining me, Henry. It's been a good chat, just me and you. Weird not having a guest on, I think, but if you're still watching, then thank you ever so much for watching.
Yeah.
Feel free to like and subscribe, and we will see you probably just before the Arsenal game.
Get on, like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll bring you some good content. And make sure to comment and give us some questions.
Yeah, sound right. We'll see you later then.